Critical thinking is the deliberate and systematic planning of information and processing it to arrive at a rational decision. In our daily lives, I think most of us are critical thinkers because we do not take information at face value. We try to infer, we try to evaluate, we try to process that information to arrive at some kind of a rational conclusion, a rational decision making, and so on. In schools, however, development of critical thinking skills is a huge challenge. Teachers are not really very familiar with how to teach these skills, but nevertheless, the importance of teaching critical thinking to students cannot be undermined. This helps not only the students to access information at a deeper level, but it also helps them to be innovative and also to be problem solvers later on in their lives. Just imagine if Archimedes and Newton were not critical thinkers, we would not have had the law of Newton or Archimedes' theory of floating and buoyancy. In this program, we will discuss about what is meant by critical thinking and also how critical thinking can be developed through the process of reading. My colleague Bharti Dogra will start the program now with a discussion on Socratic method with the help of an anecdote on Socrates, and this actually gives us a sense of how old the prevalence of this method is. Critical thinking is nothing new. It used to be used from times immemorial. So Bharti, why don't you start with that anecdote on Socrates?
I would like to tell an old story about Socrates. Now, in the story, one man came running to Socrates and said, "Sir, I have to tell you something about one of your students." Socrates replied, "First, tell me, the information which you want to share with me, is it true?" Man replied, "I am not certain about it." Then Socrates said, "Another question, the information which you want to convey to me, is it good or bad about that person?" Man replied, "It is not good. Rather, it is the other way round." Then Socrates said that the information which you want to convey about this student of mine, this is a bad information, something bad about the student, and then you are not sure whether it is true or not. Then, in that case, I would like to ask you the last question, that whether this information which you want to share with me, is it of any use? Man replied, "Probably not." Then Socrates said that the information you wanted to convey about one of my students, first of all, you are not sure whether it is true or not. Second, you are not sure whether it is useful for me or not. Third, you are not sure that whether it is something good about the student. In such a case, please don't share this information with me. Man got very confused and he left the place. Now what we can learn from this story, that Socrates has laid down certain criteria for validation of information. And what were these criteria? That whether the information is true, is it good, is it useful? We can call this as the foundation of critical thinking. That means we must have certain objective criteria for validation of our assumptions, our knowledge, our beliefs. Socratic method, which is being used right from time immemorial, it's a powerful, very powerful and the oldest method of teaching. This is based on asking questions rather than providing answers to learners. Questions are asked systematically, and in this manner we try to find out the inconsistencies or discrepancies in the understanding of the learners. So this is the oldest method which is being used, and still it is being used in legal profession, in law profession, it is still being used. Students, they learn through the use of critical thinking, reasoning and logic. This method is very popular in legal classrooms. Now next we move to critical thinking. What is critical thinking? Would you like to tell about critical thinking a little bit?
First of all, I think let's try to contrast between a non-critical thinker and a critical thinker. I think a non-critical thinker would be the one who would be guided by her assumptions, her prior knowledge, or who would like to believe that whatever the author is saying or whatever information that is present is valid information and need not be questioned anymore. Whereas a critical thinker is made to question the validity of knowledge. Not only that, the critical thinker also tries to examine her own assumptions about that particular knowledge, about that particular idea or a concept, and at the same time this questioning happens at two levels. One is about questioning your own presumptions, and secondly questioning what has been presented, which is some other author's presentation of knowledge or facts. So we can say that if we look at the slide over here, we can say that critical thinking is about establishing the validity of an assumption or an activity when you see or hear it, and especially before you say it or do it. So what can we say about critical thinking? It is this, that we examine the ideas and information beforehand so that we can take a decision whether to accept that or not. So that is very important in critical thinking. So I think this is also one very clear pointer to another important skill, which is this, that the person should have the ability to engage in reflective and independent thinking. After all, it's only with the help of reflection that you can ask questions, not only about the text, but also about yourself. What is it that I am bringing to the text? What is it that I am bringing to the knowledge? What are my assumptions? What is my prior thinking? How is it hampering? How is it coming in the way of accepting newer facts which are more valid, newer assumptions which are more valid because they have been evaluated on different levels, they have been examined on different levels, and so on and so forth. So I think critical thinking necessarily means the skill of reflection and independent thinking. Independent thinking is important because we need not be influenced by anybody, not even by an author. Even an eminent author, when some information comes from that author, we need to still evaluate, we need to still judge about how valid the assumptions are. So reflection and independent thinking are important over here.
I would like to elaborate reflection on the justification of one's own beliefs and values. As far as the teacher education is concerned, teachers, when they come to classrooms, they have certain assumptions regarding the nature of the learner, the learning process, how they construct knowledge. If suppose a teacher has experienced, she or he has experienced an educational setting where knowing the right answer, is considered as learning. So if you are coming with this belief that if I know the right answer, this is learning. So in his or her class, we'll find that she or he will reinforce the concept of external motivation, more emphasis on worksheets and other such products of assessment, and so the entire belief system, it guides your practices.
Correct.
And
yes.
it is also, if you have some such misconceptions about learning, in that case it becomes a barrier to learning.
Correct.
So we must have, even for teachers also, certain opportunities where they can reflect on their assumptions, can interact with others, can write a diary that this is what is happening in my class, I am facing this problem. You can see your strengths, you can see your weaknesses.
Right.
So reflecting on them and then arriving at the justification, whether it is right or wrong, revisiting it again, learning from others. This is very, very important.
Right. So, Bharti, I think you've pointed to a very important aspect of our teaching in the school system. I think when we are talking about the non-critical thinkers would ideally be the ones who know the right answer, but this could be done through rote learning also. So, non-critical thinkers, right answers, rote learning somehow get connected,
Yeah.
So, it is possible that rote learning, and it is known actually that rote learning will not give the skill of reflection. Rote learning does not promote reflection, but it promotes right answers, because our examination system is geared in a manner that rote learners who may not be reflective learners will get good marks and so on. So here it is very important for the teachers also to devise assessment in manners in which reflection, independent thinking can be brought out in students. Answers may be right, answers may be wrong. Whether they are wrong answers or right answers, I think leading the students through the Socratic method, where they are asked why, every time they come up with an answer, will help the learners to eliminate their own contradictions in mind. The teacher also will get clarity, and I think this will motivate the students to deeper learning. So that's why Socratic method again becomes very important when we are talking about critical thinking.
Now, here we are discussing certain points which we have already discussed so far, that how critical thinking is important. It helps in tackling new challenges. It helps in arriving at innovative new solutions to problems. It enhances language and presentation skills. And most important, it is crucial for self-reflection. Now, next we are moving to our topic is developing critical thinking through reading. First of all, critical thinking means engaging in what you read by asking questions such as, what is the author trying to say? When you go through a text, first try to find out what is the main idea of the author and what is the main argument being presented.
Just a couple of points which I want to make clear here at this point. See, normally how do we read a text? Normally when we read a text, we are trying to make some logical connections. The process of reading normally is a linear process where we start with the beginning, go through the middle and the end, and we try to see whether the beginning is linked with the middle and the end in some way or not. But critical reading or reading for critical thinking is much more of an active process. The other one, which I just now pointed out, is a passive process of reading, where we will just try to get an idea about what is being said through the paragraphs, sentences, what is the author's motive, and so on and so forth. But critical reading means engagement, active engagement with the text. Not only that, it also means that we go beyond the text to examine, to see what sources have been used, whether whatever is being said, what is the author trying to say, and how. What are the sources? What facts have been mentioned? Whether the sources are credible or not? Why is the author saying what the author is saying? What we actually analyze. We also try to interpret information, and we try to evaluate when we are talking about reading. Now let's begin with this example which we have selected for you here. This is a paragraph from the class 10 NCERT book on political science. It is talking about two-party political system. We are talking here about democracy in the textbook, and this paragraph basically is talking about how a bi-party or two-party political system prevails in countries like the US and UK. At the same time, it is also being said that in some countries like India and so on and so forth, we have multi-party system. So what is it that we need to examine? First here, we want to examine that what is the author trying to say? The author is trying to discuss one major aspect, crucial aspect of democracy, which is the party system. And in party system, what is being said further? It is being said that we have different models of political parties. We have a two-party system, and we also have a multi-party system. So when the author is talking about a two-party system, what examples are being given? We have the examples of US and UK over here. At the same time, we also have multi-party system which prevails in many countries in Asia, South Asia in particular, and so on and so forth. So how do we make this piece a bit critical? We will see that when the author is talking about the two-party system, is he giving us enough substance to believe that this is what is called by a two-party system? This is how we define a two-party system. Are the examples which are being given to us, are they valid examples? At the same time, how is the author able to distinguish between two parties and multi-parties? Are the examples, do they bring the contrast sufficiently well or not? So we examine the structure of the argument also. Is the cause effect or the comparison contrast which is being listed here, is that enough? Does that make a satisfactory sense of what is being said, and so on? And going beyond the text, we can consult Wikipedia on this, we could consult other sources on this, we can actually see the American Constitution, whether it allows for a two-party system or not. We can similarly have more readings on the UK party system and decide for ourselves, So this is how we actively engage with the text. We read, we are thinking critically, and we are reading critically as well. So I would like to say here that there is a link between critical thinking and critical reading. We cannot say what comes first, but both go hand in hand. Only when we think critically can we read critically, and vice versa. So this is one example. So like I said that, we first understand the text and then we use our own examples to see whether we've understood it or not. One important thing is to interpret and apply it to your own understanding with your own examples.
This is now third point.
Right.
As a critical reader, we can reflect on interpretation of the text, fully analyze the text, and state the meaning of the text as a whole in totality.
Right.
So now I'm moving ahead with 3 more texts.
Right.
This first text is A Gift of Chappals, Class 7th NCERT English.
Mm-hmm. So I think that one should say here that every discipline has its own criteria and its own method of critical reflection. When we are talking about literature, we have the literary criticism, which is linked to other theories and so on. And through that method, we try to look at what the author is trying to say, why is the author saying like that, and analyze and interpret and infer. So in this piece also, we need to apply the same method of critically looking at this. Bharti, would you like to add on this?
This is a text taken, this is a literary text taken from class 7th. Now in this text, again the author talks about the gift of chappals, where, one friend leaves the chappals outside the house, and very literary explanation is given that chappals were looking black in color, but otherwise they were not black, they were covered with dust. So there is a very, I'll say that it's a literary text, so that literary explanation part is given in the text. So understanding in that perspective and adding your examples wherever possible and understanding it in totality. This is what is required when you are developing critical thinking through reading. There is another text, The Best Christmas Present in the World. And the last one is a technical text, Combustion and Flame, taken from class 8th NCERT Science. This is on fuel efficiency, where we are talking about the calorific value of 3 fuels, that is the cow dung, coal and LPG. And then then there is a question that in which case the calorific value is the highest, how much heat is produced by each fuel, and in which case it is the highest. So certain questions are being raised regarding the calorific value of the 3 fuels, and we all understand it is in the case of the LPG the calorific value is the highest and there is very less pollution also. So this perspective, because it's a technical text taken from the science book, so understanding the calorific value, that what are calories, what is a unit of how it is measured. So all these technical aspects are given in the text. So understanding these technical terms, comparing the calorific value of the three fuels, and then wherever possible more examples can be given of other fossil fuels and understanding it in totality. This is what we mean by critical thinking through text.
So I think basically when the teacher discusses this paragraph, let's take the example, the teacher can also ask the same questions. That why is it that, LPG probably will have the least of pollution when amongst the three, and what is calorific value, how is it calculated? So questions and not actually even telling that the wrong answer is a wrong answer, but at least appreciating the learner that some questions are being asked, and then so that the learner is able to integrate his or her prior learning with the new perspective which has been given in the classroom. Similarly, I think when we were doing the literary texts, when we are talking about Christmas, it's also important to look at the context in which that story is written. What is the context of Christmas? Where is it very important as a festival? What is the author trying to say? And the context, the age in which the story is being written, the social context and all also becomes a part of analyzing and evaluating the text. One has learned that challenging the text, not taking the information at its face value is important.
In this technical text, even some data can be provided,
right,
and let them interpret the data. Then alternative interpretation of the data can also be given, understanding the data, how this can be interpreted, and then are there any possible other alternative interpretations of the data? Then what are the repercussions or what are the implications? What are the consequences? So, different types of questions can be given: interpretation, implications, consequences,
right,
objectives.
Right.
So these things can be taken into consideration.
So basically, I think that we have discussed in this program the importance of critical thinking. Why is it important, and how in our everyday lives also we use critical thinking as a skill. But most probably we are not aware of that ourselves because we do not structure and systematically present information to ourselves so that we can take a decision. But experience shows that whenever we do that, whenever we scientifically and systematically process information, we come up with better decisions in our day-to-day lives also. At the same time, at the school level, it constitutes a very important skill because it helps the children to get into deeper levels of understanding. It takes them away from the rote learning, which is so much prevalent in our schools. It also makes them more innovative. They can become problem solvers as well. But then this requires a bit of an effort from the teacher's side. The teacher has to prepare accordingly. The teacher has to present the material in a particular manner. And the teacher also has to assess the learners so that they can critically apply the information and come up with answers which are indicative that critical thinking process is being developed amongst the learners. Bharti, would you like to say something towards the end?
I think critical thinking is not only important in teaching learning process. Critical thinking is required at every stage of your life. If you have to take a decision regarding the stream which you have to choose, why you have to choose the stream, what are the various criteria on the basis of which you will choose humanities over sciences. So even for choosing your profession, for your vocation, for your stream, you require critical thinking. For making every decision in life, you require critical thinking. It is so important. Just one aspect, that choosing your profession, vocation, choosing your life partner, deciding, making so many decisions in your life requires critical thinking. So this is very, very important. Thank you very much.